It's my great honour to welcome you all.
It is a very prestigious award. It means the world to me.
They have great senses of humour.
I like to reveal parts of history to them, for I love making history come alive.
They are some of the best people that you can come across.
To help them open their hearts.
I always come back to this quote. How can we be role models to learners if we're not learners ourselves?
It's quite useful to get out of our bubbles, not our COVID ones, and sort of see what else is out there.
By sharing best practice, we can see the whole picture. We can see what really matters.
One of the biggest brains around.
It's easy to forget how much has to happen behind the front lines.
As a global schools group, Cognita educates over 55,000 students across 12 countries. We're proud to be Wellbeing Partner at this year's Festival of Education, and we want to share the work that we're doing to prioritise children's well-being. This starts with a clear understanding of what well-being is. We looked at the evidence and created a simple Be Well Charter that everyone can use day to day. It gives a clear definition of well-being and then focuses on the specific contributors that influence it. Discover our full Be Well Charter video and other resources to use with your students and families at cognita.com.
I really try to not look at myself as just a science teacher. I feel like as a teacher, it's very important to help students grow and develop outside of your lessons. A single teacher believing in you and really believing in you. One teacher doing that can have a large impact, but if you have one or two or three all telling you that and really, really believing in it, it makes you feel like you can achieve anything in the world, honestly.
Welcome to this Festival of Education keynote session, part of the annual Festival of Education, taking place online from the 16th to the 30th of June. This year's festival is free for all teachers and educationalists across education in the UK and beyond. This has only been possible thanks to the support of our incredible partners. A huge thank you to our headline partner, Pearson, our festival partners, BBC Bitesize, Cognita and Teach First, our literary festival partner, Bloomsbury Publishing, and our organising partner, Wellington College, the home of the Festival of Education. We'd also like to thank our incredible speakers. Over 200 leading educationalists and thought leaders will be providing sessions at this year's festival. On behalf of the audience and organisers, thank you. It's time to sit back and get set for our upcoming keynote session. If you wish to ask a question during this session, please head over to our Slido page to submit questions and vote for your favourites. Enjoy this Festival of Education keynote session.
Hi, hello, good afternoon. So pleased to be virtually at the Festival of Education, and it's really lovely to have you all join us. I'm Abby, I'm a researcher at the Centre for Education and Youth. I've organised today's session with my wonderful colleague Vanessa, who will be joining us for the Q&A section of today. The Centre for Education and Youth is a think and action tank. We carry out research and provide support and tools to policymakers, organisations and practitioners who work alongside young people. Before I joined the team, I was a youth worker, working with young people and families who face barriers to engaging with education and with youth services. Like me, everyone in the CFEY team brings their own experiences working on the ground, and we're all passionate about supporting young people to be heard. I'm joined today by a fantastic panel of young people, Joy, Alicia, Auras, and by Dame Rachel D'Souza, the Children's Commissioner. I'll let them all introduce themselves shortly, but first I'll briefly run through the plan for today. The aim of today's session is to discuss support for young people from the perspective of young people. Alicia, Auras and Joy all have different stories of their journey through education, but along the way they've all been in situations that have made learning harder, or they've faced barriers to engaging. They've all navigated these in different ways, and they're experts in effective support through their own experiences. At the Centre for Education and Youth, all of our research aims to centre the voices and experiences of young people and those who work with them. We've recently published a book, Young People on the Margins, that weaves together stories from 10 years of fieldwork with data and recommendations for policy and practice. Our panel today draws on some of the themes of the book, thinking more about the support that makes a difference for young people who are facing challenges to engaging in learning and in youth work. First, Rachel is here to tell us about her current work on Youth Voice. And next, I'll pass over to our panel to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their journey. Rachel will then talk about how themes from Joy, Auras and Alicia's stories link to some of the work that the Office for the Children's Commissioner is leading at the moment. Then we'll open up to questions, and you should be able to submit yours through Slido. My colleague Vanessa will collect these and ask our panel. To finish up, Auras, Joy and Alicia will share their top tips for teachers, youth workers and social workers supporting young people in similar situations to theirs. Let's get started. Rachel, would you like to begin?
Thanks very much, and I'm really delighted to be here. And I would just say the CFEY book, Young People on the Margins, was very influential for me, certainly when I was thinking about applying for the Children's Commissioner role, and I'd strongly recommend it. And great to be here with a panel of young people. I'm Rachel D'Souza, the Children's Commissioner for England, and I took up this role in March of this year. From the outset, and indeed before I'd been confirmed in the role, I made it absolutely clear, indeed publicly in a hearing in Parliament, that my firm belief is in the importance of getting the authentic, honest and true views of children and young people. I wanted nothing less than the largest survey of children of all backgrounds and ages ever tried. I was daunted when I started, my office was daunted, but my strong feeling is, without that foundation, in this unique window of history, the end of a global pandemic and a year of school closures, children and young people have made huge sacrifices to keep us and the NHS safe. And it's the time to give them something back. We need to give backgrounds and situations. So we're now digging into that mountain of information to produce a plan I'm equally ambitious about. Again, nothing less than a 10-year plan to reset, reform and revitalise our shared offer to children. Starting my 6-year term, I can't and won't settle for less. I want our Children's Commission, the report that will follow, to be like the Beveridge report was for social care in the 40s. And already the results are showing trends. Some of these might have been predicted.
children are worried about their mental health. They're worried about general well-being. They're worried about family strain. There are concerns about money. There are concerns about families and about schooling and about their future.
Hi everyone, I'm Alicia Bob. I'm 23 years old and was formerly homeless. I became homeless at 16, around 4 months into my first year at college. I was sofa surfing, staying with friends, and life just became extremely difficult when my grandmother passed away in the midst of preparing for exams. I felt like teachers were more concerned with the exams than to support me in my time of need. I wasn't offered any internal or external support from organisations, and this is when I dropped out. I had a part-time job in IKEA at the time, so I was kind of happy with that. But they wouldn't increase my hours, so eventually I left there. With me still sofa surfing and living with in between houses, I decided to kind of look for something a bit more permanent or stable, like an apprenticeship. At this point, when I did leave my part-time job, I was passed a pillar and post, attending multiple youth workshops, for neat young people that had no outcome or follow-up for me. After 3 months of traveling all across London to these support groups, I was told that they could no longer assist me because I wasn't a part of social services. So I did everything they required me to do, but I couldn't progress any further with them. So without any guidance of how to get assistance after that, I was unemployed and out of education for a year until I was placed into my first hostel, which is like a temporary accommodation, where being employed wasn't an option and the education offered to me wasn't of any interest or my area of expertise. Another 6 or 7 months of unemployment, no form of community engagement or support. And then finally something popped up, a project called A Place to Call Home, conducted by Sage Foundation and LKM Co, to see how the education can prevent youth homelessness, reasons behind youth homelessness, and what actions can be taken by the community. I was able to befriend an unofficial mentor, Elaine, who up until today gives me advice, listens to my concerns, and supports me however she can. If it wasn't for this project and meeting Elaine, I don't believe I would have got the support from social services, housing, or education that I needed. I believe I would have been left stagnant and still be in an unstable condition today. Now I work as an engagement coordinator at Radical Recruit, a social recruitment company that is all about diversity and inclusion. We work with young people, care leavers, formerly homeless people, people currently going through homelessness, prison leavers, domestic abuse survivors, and people with mental and physical disabilities, helping them into meaningful permanent employment. We also educate businesses on how to be more inclusive and diverse employers and support people from these backgrounds. At the moment, I co-host weekly workshops in CV writing, interview preparation, and confidence boosting, and career advice. We run these with the help of volunteers and people from the business community. Those with a background in recruitment and would like to give back and create meaningful change to lives of those who don't always get the opportunities I had. So yeah, that's really a bit about me. Is the call to action for the end, or shall I do it now?
I'm keen to hear it, but if you can save it for the end, that would be perfect.
I'll save it for the end. I'll save it for the end.
Thanks so much, Alicia.
Thank you.
Joy, I'm going to pass over to you now.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Joy Milani. I'm 22 and I'm a caregiver. So a bit about my educational background. I came to the country, to United Kingdom when I was 6 years old, and I was actually trafficked into the country. But I came here when I was 6, and I was basically immediately placed into private foster care. And this means that I wasn't living with my biological family, but the government, the state, were not aware of this. So I was I started school like a year after I came into the country, and I started in year 2. And it was a bit odd for me because I'd already learned what we were being taught in year 2. So it felt like I was actually behind a year. But nobody was really concerned to place me in year 3 or to even inquire about why I was a bit ahead of everybody else in the class. So skip to year 5 now, when I'm 9 years old. The private foster home that I'm living in kind of just takes a massive, drastic turn, and it just becomes very, very abusive. So I'm feeling quite depressed in a young age of being 9 years old. And some of the teachers are aware of this, but again, they're not really asking if anything, what's wrong or what's going on at home. So I finally got some support when I was 14. This was years later, 5 years later, when there was somebody who came to the private foster home I was living with. And it was an agreement made with the private foster mother I had, or carer, and she'd have made an agreement with him to sort of like take me away from their home. So I had like they weren't my siblings, but it was like the carer's children. We were really close. And when this guy came, they were like, no, like we can't let this guy take Joy away. And they were really scared, and then they called the police without letting their mum know. So the police came, and the police arrested the guy, and they realized that I wasn't the biological child of this woman. And so social services started doing visits. So I finally got a social worker at 14. And I felt like, for the first time, could I finally share what had been happening? Could I finally get the help I needed? But there was a lot of control around what I was to say to the social workers. And I just felt too scared to tell them what was really going on. So eventually, when I was 16, I actually just packed my things and I just left. And I went to go and live with my friend. And so this was flagged by somebody at school, so the social services got involved again. They didn't realize that I had actually left. And then once they found out, they placed me into state foster care. And I had a trained foster carer, and it was a much better situation I was in. So a missed opportunity I had to support. There were many that I've outlined, in the story that I shared. But I think the biggest missed opportunity was when I was 14, and I actually had social services involved. They were involved in my case. And through my body language, and even just, the fact that I wanted them to come and visit me at school, separate from home where the carer was at, I felt like they missed those cues to realize that something was really wrong. And I also had like about, 4 different social workers with me, like I think in the space of 8 months. And so there was nobody that I could really, get to know, to trust, to tell them what was happening. But after, leaving the home I was in, I was actually able to start just kind of having a normal life again at 16, which I was really grateful for. And I signed up to something called Homework Club, which is organized by the head of education in Lewisham, and her name is Brona Madin. I'm not too sure if she still is, but she was so wonderful to us. And we would just go to that club, we would have dinner, we'd do our homework, we'd get whatever GCSEs or A-level training or support we needed. And there was just lots of opportunities within that community as well for us to do more extracurricular activities and even like travel and do charity work. So I felt like that was awesome. This just sort of grounded me into feeling like I could have a normal life and I could just be a normal teenager, and not have to think about everything I've been through. And one of my proudest achievements in education is when I was, this was like 16, 17, and I got my first ever A, and that was in media studies. And I was very surprised because I was really behind in media studies because of what was going on. But once I caught on, I did my exam and I found out I got A, and I was just so proud and I was just so grateful. So yeah, and where I am now currently, I am similar with Alicia. I'm actually working with a charity who are super incredible, and they help care leavers get into employment and further training and education to get into like their dream job, not just like working at McDonald's, but working, in a law company or working at a really top media company. So I've been with them for about 3 years, and I'm currently an ambassador for them. But I feel really grateful to have the support that Drive Forward have given me. And just with the help, I've been able to like start a few businesses. I've been able to really know what I want to do, like, you know, which is being in the creative industry, as well as having speaking opportunities like now speaking at this educational festival panel, which I feel really honoured and grateful to be a part of. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Joy. We're lucky to have you with us, definitely. Auras, I'm going to pass over to you now. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Auras and I'm 18 and I'm currently working with the youth offending team. I'm currently in education. I'm looking forward to pass my GCSEs this time. What else? And yeah. So like,
Can I ask you some questions?
Pardon? Yeah, ask me some questions.
Could you tell us a little bit about the course that you're on at the moment?
Yes, the course I'm learning English and maths, so I can pass my GCSEs English. Yeah.
It's quite an interesting course, isn't it? Because it's not delivered in a traditional school.
Yeah, it is actually. I mean, the youth offending team provides you with better opportunities and all that. And yeah, I'm grateful to have that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
It's an online course, isn't it? So you work one-to-one with a tutor?
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like you've been doing really well on it. Is there...
Yeah.
I just wondered if there was anything while you were at school that you think could have been quite useful at the time?
Yeah.
That's completely okay.
Yeah. But now I'm confident I'm going to pass this time. Yeah.
Brilliant. Cool. Let's pass on. Thank you so much, Auras.
No problem.
Rachel, I wonder if you had any reflections after listening to our panel.
Absolutely, and it was just so good to hear from all three of you. And there's so much to learn for all of us and to think about, and so much for the education sector to think about after hearing your stories. Some of the things that jumped out to me, Alicia, your story of homelessness, and what you experienced. It just brought out for me that as educators, I mean, I was in school as a teacher and a head teacher for many years before I took this role. The need for care and support and recognition of what you needed in school just jumps out of your story. If we could have done something early and supported early, you could have avoided a lot of what you went through. So I mean, that really shouted out for me. And although in the end it's come to a really fantastic position, I mean, what just shone through was the amazing work you're doing now and supporting others. So your journey hasn't been in vain. It's definitely, look at how it's impacted on what you can do. I just wish that we were set up in schools to have been able to catch you when you needed catching. So that really, really shone out from there. And the question is, how could we do that? How could we do that better? Joy, your story, oh my goodness. I mean, my office is absolutely focused on care leavers. We run a service called Help at Hand for the most tricky situations, whether it's young people insecure, or young people, care leavers, really not getting what they need. And I often find myself hearing stories like yours, but that don't have such a positive ending, and we're having to write to local authorities, write to arrangement to get it sorted. I would say there are some things that are shouting out at me from your story about relationships. And had you had the strong relationships you've got now right from the start, had you had the one social worker, had you had the quality of care we'd expect for all of our children, and that single relationship. And the big ask, it's interesting, care experienced children who've responded to the Big Ask have all said, we just want one person, just that one person who's with us right the way through, who knows us. I mean, things like you've been in the wrong year at school, things like that should just have been sorted. So, I mean, it just shows me how much we've still got to do. I am seeing there are fantastic care leavers boards, and there's even a ministerial care leavers boards. People are really getting interested in this, but we need now to be thinking about not just we've now got, for example, unregulated care is now forbidden under 16. We need to be looking carefully at the experience of 16 to 18 and 18 plus and making sure that goes well. But there are so many lessons from your story that we could really talk all day, couldn't we? And look at you and how amazing you are, and what you're doing is so impressive. And we need to hear that. Oris, I'm really pleased to hear about your digital education online. It sounds like that's really helped, and the yacht have helped you turn a positive corner and it turn positively round. For one thing I'd like to tell you is that yesterday I was speaking to a justice minister. I've been speaking to justice ministers and talking about things like how we prevent young people getting into both youth justice and beyond, into some of the issues that come from, and how we get young people turned around. It sounds like you are really turning your life around. I've been talking to ministers about secure schools rather than prisons, about remand in the community, and some pretty heavy stuff. I think the important thing is, if you get engaged with youth offending teams at this point, that it can be a real positive turnaround change, and you can have a flourishing, successful life in the future. That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm seeing. And it was really good to hear from you. So that they were my first thoughts, but I'm sure everyone will have a lot more.
Thank you so much. I think as well, kind of on the flip side of you pointing out all the lessons to be learned from the things that haven't gone so right, I feel like there's quite a few lessons of the bits that have really worked for you guys. So finding someone that does support you and mentor you, finding out about different opportunities. And I think there's tons to learn about what really works in there as well. Over to the audience now. I'm sure you'll all have questions for our panel after hearing their stories. Please do submit them through Slido and we'll get through as many as possible. We'd prefer to keep questions relating to support to make this as practical as possible, rather than focusing on details from Joy, Alicia and Aris's lives. I'm going to hand over to Vanessa now, who will take us through the Q&A.
Thank you, and thank you for having me today. I've really enjoyed listening to your stories. All of you are doing amazingly. It's a shame to hear that you had to do that in spite of many barriers, but it's still good to hear that you guys are doing well now. I'm going to wait a second for the questions to come in, but Abby and I have been dying to speak to you anyway, so we've got a whole bunch of questions lined up for you. What I'll do is I'll just throw the question out, and whoever wants to answer, if you maybe just put your hand up and then unmute yourself and you can go ahead. So the first question is there anything that anybody else spoke about that you feel like feels similar to the experiences that you had?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of what Joy said, I think in school, a lot of the time I felt like, leave your troubles at the door. Don't bring them in here. And nowadays, that's, a toxic environment. That's what we call it now. But in school, that's how, what I was told when I came to teachers with concerns and things like that. I think there's not enough support for teachers as well when they are dealing with children that have these issues or barriers and things. So, yeah.
Thank you. Absolutely. Joy, did you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you for this question. So similar with Alicia about being homeless at 16. So I was actually technically at risk of being homeless, and I did try and speak to my local council to explain to them what happened, and they told me to just go back to the previous placement that I was at that was very abusive. And I felt like this was very negligent, the local authorities. But because I didn't go directly to social services, because I didn't want to deal with social workers, I didn't want them to know what happened. It wasn't until I went to a different charity, I told them what happened. They got a solicitor involved, had to write a letter to social services so that they can finally put me in foster care. And I feel like, and I've known many, caregivers who were 16 and homeless, living at the park, living on the street.
Up on stuff earlier and giving you the support that you feel like you needed. We've got some questions coming in now from the audience. The first one is, do you prefer to have support from specific an individual? Sorry, that question. I might skip that question until I can formulate that in my head. Apologies. The first question then is, if you were the PM, so Prime Minister, what one thing would you change to help support young people in your position? Joy, go ahead.
So this is a little bit unrelated to education, but there is a bit of a link there. So when I came into the country, of course, I was living in private foster care, so nobody was aware. But then when I was 14, social services were aware, the government were aware. And they were also aware that I didn't actually have any documentation, and they didn't do anything about this. So at 16, this was finally sorted out, but I was given something called temporary leave to remain. And that means that every 2.5 years, I have to apply for a new, residence permit. And this doesn't give me the same rights as somebody who's a citizen or has indefinite leave to remain. And so when I wanted to go to university at 18, I actually couldn't because I wasn't eligible for public funds because I just didn't have a British citizen and I didn't have a citizenship and I didn't have rights to public funds. And I was in foster care. And so I felt like that was a massive missed opportunity for me to go to university to continue my education because I just didn't have, a British passport. And I've been in the country for 17 years and I just felt like, this is kind of my country. This is all I've known. I don't know where I come from. I don't know the language. The language I know is English. My friends, everywhere, the community, everything that it's really been here. So I feel like if I was a Prime Minister, I would make a bill that actually enables caregivers to apply for British citizenship if they've been in the country for maybe 10 plus years or if they've experienced being in state foster care.
Thank you, Joy. Did anybody else want to add to that? Aris, I know you haven't had a chance to speak yet. I don't know if you wanted to say something.
No, I haven't got any questions.
Okay, no worries. Alicia, before I move on?
Yeah. I just wanted to say, if I was Prime Minister, I'd create initiatives for each, social diversities that we do have that aren't actually acknowledged in society currently, such as care leavers, and, create a more inclusive society, which I think is the first step of eradicating things like homelessness or unemployment, especially amongst young people.
Thank you, Alicia. I have managed to formulate the other question correctly in my mind. It just took me a second. So the question is, do you prefer to have support from a specific individual long term, or would you rather have a selection of people?
I don't really think it's about the individual or the person. I actually think it's about the action and what's the outcome of the support. So, the person or individuals or organization doesn't really matter to me. It's actually the impact of what they are doing.
Absolutely. And Joy or Aris, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Alicia. I feel like, I did have a PA for about 2 years and I would go to them about, concerns and things I needed help with, but nothing was ever done. So I felt like I was happy that I was able to actually apply, tell social services, can I please have another PA? So yeah, again, it really is about how much impact that person can have and how much support they can help you with. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. Before I move on, did anyone want to add anything? No? Okay. Another question that we have is, do you guys think there's a role for youth workers to be supporting people in formal school settings more?
Yes, that's a great idea. I love that.
What do the rest of you guys think? Joy?
So it was actually a youth worker that helped me finally get into state foster care when I was 16. So I feel like, if that was an option for every single person who is in care or is a caregiver, the support that you really need. So it's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like having your own advocate almost, I guess. Somebody to just kind of champion your needs. So Alicia, this one's slightly directed to you, but I do want to kind of open it up to the whole panel. So you mentioned finding 1 or 2 people to support you. Sorry, was it you that mentioned Elaine, actually?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, okay, good, just checking. What was it that this person, so Elaine in this case, what does she do differently to others that made her so helpful? Again, I want to open this up to anybody. So Alicia, if you go first, and then if anyone had somebody that they feel like made a real impact on their lives, would love to know kind of what they did and what lessons you feel like we could learn from it.
Well, in my case, I think something that Elaine did for me was treat me like a human being. There's a lot of stigma around homelessness. Usually when people imagine homelessness, they just think of, an old guy living on a bench or something like that, when this is far from the truth. So being treated like just a human being was definitely something I appreciated. Having someone listen to my concerns and actually take the time to explain to me how things work, what's really going on, and just have my back as well through hard times. And that's really the support that I needed and that I wasn't available. And Elaine did do that just out of her own kind of kindness of her heart, really.
That's great to hear. Joy, did you want to add to that? Auris, how about you? I'm keen to kind of get you involved in the conversation. Do you feel like you've had maybe an individual in your journey that's helped you or supported you in any way?
I didn't quite get the question.
So have you met somebody kind of in your journey that's helped you in any way?
My
maybe
journey.
Sorry, go on.
Think my youth offending what's it called? I forgot what was the role in. You know what I'm saying?
Is it the youth offending officer, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, and what kind of help has he given you?
Oh, so.
Or you don't necessarily have to be specific, but I'm quite keen to kind of hear what you feel like worked well in that respect, if you don't want to go into too much detail.
So it helped me with like sorting out universal credit for me and all that. Yeah.
That's good. And do you think that's handy to have somebody kind of help you with applications and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think it's very helpful.
That's great. Thank you for that. Does anyone want to add anything before I move on?
Yeah, just adding on to what Arif said is, filling in forms, doing that stuff, especially when you're just out of school, you've not really experienced that all of that before. So it is definitely helpful getting that. It's hard enough as an adult filling in forms, let alone as a young person. So
yeah, absolutely. It's good to have somebody, I guess, with those more life skill things to some degree to just help you out with like day-to-day things that might get you in a bit of a pickle if you don't do it. Okay, the next question is, as a teacher in training, they're curious about your thoughts on how individual teachers can make themselves better able to support young people like yourselves. So as a teacher, kind of what should they be conscious of when supporting young people in schools?
This is a really great question. I feel like, so with my experience, not many teachers were, notified. It was just kind of more like my form tutor was notified when I was in sixth form. But I do know that one of the teachers was notified when I was in secondary school and I was still in private foster care. And I disclosed something to her that I was concerned about, that I really needed help with. And she decided to just arrange a meeting with me, her, and my private foster carer. And I felt like this was such a big mistake, or such a bad idea. But just not like jumping to like get the carer involved. You don't know what's happening with this carer. You don't know if they're even a stable parent. You don't know what's happening. You don't know what consequences could lie from that action that I thought was innocent. I think it's important to always liaise with social workers and just whoever's acting on the behalf of the young person, so that you're aware of what's going on. You're aware of how to best speak with the young person. And I mean, I've not known anyone do this to me personally, but I have known other care leaders who've experienced this. But making it obvious that this person doesn't care when they don't want other people to know. They want to still seem normal to their peers and classmates, to not go around telling everyone that they're in foster care or they're a care leaver, keeping that information confidential as it should be.
Before I move on to anybody else, I just want to pick up on what you kind of said at first about being conscious when bringing in your carer. In that case, do you think maybe bringing you involved in the conversation when thinking about next stages would have been better? Or do you think it would have been a case of, if your teacher spoke more maybe to your youth worker, what do you think would have been handy in that case?
So in that case, I actually explicitly told her that I was being abused and I needed help. And she didn't think to, go and liaise with a social worker and tell this to the social worker, or even report it to like the head of school to see if to get the police involved. I felt like she just made the wrong action, took the wrong decision of like getting the carer involved. So what would have helped was you can, feed in this information back to social services or to the head of year, somebody who could do something and help.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry to hear that you went through that. Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody want to add to that question? So thinking about what teachers can do to support young people in schools. No?
No,
Alicia?
no. It's kind of in my call to action.
Okay, no worries. How much time do I have left, by the way, Abby? 5 minutes. Amazing. Okay. So the question is, young people who are struggling can find themselves in trouble at school rather than getting the support they need. Do the panel have any experience of this? Joy, do you want to go for it?
Yeah, this is such a great question. So when I was 14, once, actually, I think this might have been, I'm not too sure if it was like before or after social services got involved, but I was really depressed from what was happening. And I did start acting out a bit at school and things like that. And eventually I just kind of numbed everything out and I just got on with school. And so I was doing quite well at one of my classes. And I remember there was like it's like a teachers' conference when the parents come in to see how your grades are and how you're doing at school. And so one of the teachers said to the carer I had at the time, "Oh, Joy's grades are going up, like her grades are really good." And she said, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing that," to the parent. And I felt like this was the worst thing she could have ever said, because I was being abused. And the only reason my grades were going up was because I just felt like that was the only way to sort of get my carer off my back. Like, if I'm doing well at school, like, I'm doing well, I'm a good student, I don't have to like be in trouble for anything. But that's always stayed with me ever since that day. And I feel like teachers need to be so careful about what they say with parents and with carers. And especially with that, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You don't know what this person is doing, and I don't think you should say that to the carer.
Absolutely. Alris or Alicia, do you want to add something?
Yeah, in school, I was the opposite of Joy. I was quite, used to be quite outspoken, really. I wouldn't say I was too much trouble, but probably for my teachers, it was a bit annoying. But yeah, I did miss a lot of school. My attendance probably got down to, at its worst, 45%. And these are, you know, things that are detrimental to any young people's education. So that's definitely something to kind of look out for.
Absolutely. I'm going to move on. There was another question I wanted to ask you because I'm conscious of the time. So somebody asks, do you think that care experienced young people should be taught to prepare for adult life? So, for example, managing finances. And how do you imagine this could be delivered? So this could be young people that have been in care, for example. So I'm going to broaden it out, or maybe have been excluded, or just maybe experience some sort of difficulty. Do you think they need or would want some sort of preparation for adult life?
I think all young people need preparation for adult life. We all turn into adults. I don't think care leavers or people that are troubled just need life skills. Actually, all young people need it. There's people my age that have no clue how to fill in forms and do these type of things. And that's just the matter of fact of life, I think.
Aris, you kind of mentioned application forms before, so I'm going to jump to you next. Do you think it'd be useful for young people to learn life skills, so all young people to learn life skills? And if so, what kind of things would you like to learn about?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for to help young people prepare for the adulting. Yeah.
What kind of stuff would you need support with? So you mentioned applications. Is there anything else you're imagining? Somebody mentioned finance.
Nothing goes from my head right now.
That's fine. Thank you for your contribution.
Yeah,
does anyone, Joy, did you want to add something?
Yeah, so I was going to mention that I'm not too sure if Alicia or Alice have had this, but with Lewisham Council, there's something called the Money House. And right before you turn 18 or you get your own place, you have to go there for a week and you learn life skills. You learn financing, taxes, budgeting, how to manage a home, pay bills, all of this stuff. And it's really great. It's very comprehensive and it's really, really great. We get a qualification out of it. But about the question, I do feel like it's sort of like segregating, care leavers or care experienced people. And I don't feel like that's really fair. We're not going to feel normal if you're having a separate class for us to learn about life skills. I think it should be something that everybody learns together. And I think it should be taught in a way that the reality is some people do have to become adults really early on. But let's teach these things to all of you all so that you're all aware of the responsibility and how much us care leavers sort of have to do, have to juggle every day.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Do I have time for another question or no? Well, somebody said you are all remarkable, so I just wanted to leave off with that.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. I'm going to pass back to Abby.
Thanks, Vanessa, and thank you all so much. It was really interesting just to sit and listen to you all. To finish up, I'm going to pass back to you one at a time to hear your tip for practitioners who might be thinking about young people facing similar situations. Joy, can I go to you first? What would you recommend?
Yes, thank you for this question, Abby. So I've actually got a tip for both teachers and social workers. So the first tip for social workers is that please don't make false promises. So I had a proper social worker when I was 16 once I came into state foster care, and she promised me so many things. She promised me I'd get to travel and I'd have travel money. She promised me that I would get my driving license and it would all be paid for by social services. She promised me that I could go to university when I was 18 with my peers, and none of these things happened. And I felt like I was putting a lot of trust, in her words. I was holding on to everything she was saying. And once the reality of that I couldn't do all of these things settled in, I just felt like I couldn't trust her. I couldn't trust social services. And this started rubbing off on my own confidence. I couldn't, even am I not, able to have a normal life like everybody else? So please don't make false promises. And a tip for teachers is, once you're aware that a student in your class is, in care or they're a care leaver, please don't be very flippant about this. Understand that there's a lot, there's a lot that care experienced people have dealt with and are dealing with. So please do come with compassion and kindness, and just try and see how much you can check up on us privately, and just come with a lot of caring energy. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Joy. I think the one about false promises is
for the audience is to create change, be the person that inspires. Don't try and be the liberator of the oppressed, be the person fighting by their side. Big business entities and the education system have the power to change the future for young people like us on this panel, to educate yourself into the different diversities of our society and how we can support one another to create an actual impact. And if you are looking to get involved in being that change society greatly needs, please connect with me on LinkedIn to discuss volunteering opportunities we have at Radical Recruit and how to get involved. Thank you.
Yes, Alicia, I was just sat there nodding. Oris, can I please pass to you? Do you have a tip for perhaps someone in the youth offending team or a teacher?
No, I ain't got no tips.
Can you think of one thing that you would really
For
like?
teachers?
Yeah, perfect. Is there something they could bear in mind or something they could actually do that you think would make a difference?
Students sometimes have their moments, and teachers have to understand some.
Yeah, there's things going on in everyone's lives, aren't they?
Yeah.
That's really important. Thank you. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. Thank you so much to our brilliant panel. You've been so open and so generous sharing your experiences. And thank you as well to the audience. We've had some really thoughtful, useful questions. Please do tweet us with any thoughts you might have had about today. Take a look at the CFEY website if you'd like to see more about our work, including our book, Young People on the Margins. And do also look out for other Festival of Education panels hosted by the CFEY team. There are 3 more coming up in the next 2 weeks, focusing on specific areas from the book, and they all look really, really interesting. Thank you again. That's all from us today, but please do keep in touch. Bye.
It's my great honour to welcome you all.
It is a very prestigious award. It means the world to me.
They have great senses of humour.
I like to reveal parts of history to them, for I love making history come alive.
They are some of the best people that you can come across.
To help them open their hearts.
I always come back to this quote. How can we be role models to learners if we're not learners ourselves?
It's quite useful to get out of our bubbles, not our COVID ones, and sort of see what else is out there.
By sharing best practice, we can see the whole picture. We can see what really matters.
One of the biggest brains around.
It's easy to forget how much has to happen behind the front lines.
As a global schools group, Cognita educates over 55,000 students across 12 countries. We're proud to be Wellbeing Partner at this year's Festival of Education, and we want to share the work that we're doing to prioritise children's well-being. This starts with a clear understanding of what well-being is. We looked at the evidence and created a simple Be Well charter that everyone can use day to day. It gives a clear definition of well-being and then focuses on the specific contributors that influence it. Discover our full Be Well Charter video and other resources to use with your students and families at cognita.com.